in this thematic session that nicely follows from the plenary that we just heard downstairs about weighing the risks in policy making. And during this session, we will be looking into the interplay between and regulation of the rapidly developing technologies. I have a wonderful panel here with me, and I hope to learn a lot about these issues as well. And we will try to make it as interactive as possible, so please, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, get ready, because there will be time to interact with the audience at this particular session. So I will just very briefly, my name is Anna Persic, I work for UNESCO Natural Sciences sector in Paris. I in particular work on the issues related to open science and science diplomacy. And so the issues with relating to these rapidly developing technologies, disruptive technologies, are very, very critical also in the context of open science and in the context of science diplomacy. Because whatever happens in this technological space today very much affects the diplomatic space as well. So how do we bring together these two worlds when we talk about these technologies that can either better our lives or they can be disruptive to our lives in a negative way? Or even worse, they can be very beneficial for some and not that beneficial for the others. So the question of equity and regulation also comes into play, and I hope that we will have a little bit of time to discuss those issues as well. So I have in the panel here with me Clarissa Rios Rojas, who is the Political Affairs Officer at the UN Office of Disarmament Affairs, and she's also an ISC Fellow, the Fellow of International Science Council. I have Professor Thomas Harting, who is a professor at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and Dr. Yana Sui, Associate Professor at Tsinghua University in China. So welcome to our panelists. I think we will start by a short 5-minute introduction by each one of you. We would just want to know, how do you relate to the questions of these rapidly developing technologies? And here we mean neurotechnologies, biotechnologies, artificial intelligence, quantum technologies that we are hearing a lot about. So how does your work relate to those technologies? And what would be your pitch in terms of the thematic of our session today?
I think I have some slides here. Can you put them on? Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. I have a strong interest in some of the disruptive technologies of the moment which are changing biomedicine, especially AI. I'm the field chief editor of Frontiers in AI, and I work with the World Economic Forum and others on these top technologies. I would like to show you in this short presentation where I see the possibilities for biomedical research. We then will discuss on, is this something we can control and we should control? And my short position is, I think we cannot control it. The genie is out of the bottle and it is globally active. We will not be able to regulate something that fast-pacing. But I don't want to spoil you with this from front. I believe that, on the contrary, it is opening up for opportunities which are incredible. I believe that we can move, for example, to a human exposome project. The human genome for the last 40 years has dominated biomedical research. It has changed the face of our field. But only 4% of diseases are purely genetic, and about 40% have a strong genetic component. 70 to 80% at least have an environmental component, some type of exposure and lifestyle aspect. So next slide. I can promote here. Sure. Perfect. So we are actually convening next May in Washington, DC, in this beautiful venue by Hopkins, a stakeholder forum, a moonshot forum as we call it, in order to create a roadmap for a human exposome project, bringing together the opinion leaders, the policymakers, and the possible funders of such a project. And we have already more than 50 stakeholder organizations, as I will show you in a second, among them 4 NIH institutes, but also globally the important consortia, the OECD and others. This all is possible because we see at the moment an enormous advent of AI. AI is the synergy of three important trends. AI is, on the one hand, facilitated by the growth in our computers. Over 60 years, Moore's law, every second year they're twice as powerful. But also the data in the world are growing incredibly. They're doubling every 18 months, or 90% of all data in the world were produced in the last 3 years. And our AI systems are doubling in capacities since 2010 when deep learning was introduced. They're doubling every 3 months. So this year's AI is about 8 times more powerful than last year's, about the difference between ChatGPT 3 and 4. And this is why so many human skills are assumed very quickly. You see on the very left here that deciphering handwriting from the computer couldn't do it. Every human was better than the AI, to 100% outperforming of humans was taking 18 years. But the very right, you see things like coding. In only 2 years, the AI achieved more or less human coding capabilities. And this is an enormous disruptive technology. And I believe that toxicology or safety sciences is about to change now quickly as well. I will skip this. This is our own work on this, just showing how in 10 years we moved from very small models to bigger and bigger models. Our current models are actually around 254 million data points, and we are able to predict 4,000 properties of chemicals with 90% accuracy. I don't have the time. If you're interested, I'm more than happy to talk about our science. At the same time, biomedical research is fueled by stem cell research, and the so-called microphysiological systems, which are really human organs in a dish, or combined human organs, are a fantastic development, which is really making finally human test systems available. And we have been driving this with a lot of workshops, finally creating an international society and organizing 3 international world summits in New Orleans, in Berlin and in Seattle, and we bring this to Brussels next year because there is a very important component for the Human Exposome project, not only in the AI, but also in human type of test systems in order to find these pathways. There's also incredible stuff possible by combining these technologies. Our pet project at the moment is called Organoid Intelligence, OI, because we are combining AI and talk to a brain organoid, to a microphysiological system of the brain. What you can see here is the type of computer games we let these little organoids play, because we are trying to establish learning and memory in these systems. It's what we call OI, and this is at the moment taking off quite incredibly. And we have first evidences for long-term learning. After about 2 years ago, acute learning was shown with similar approaches. And we are now expanding this to different types of diseases, Alzheimer's, autism, different rare diseases, because we believe that this is a drug development tool of first class. But it's also inspiring biocomputing. And all of this is trying to form a community around this, OI as well. We convinced the National Science Foundation to have a call open for engineering organ intelligence. The White House made this a bold biotechnology goal of the US. And we have formed a community with newsletter and website. Please contact me if you're interested. All of these are some of the pillars beside digital twins, quantum sensing, biomonitoring, and other elements which we want to bring together now in this Moonshot Forum, which is taking place in May, as I said. This is the organizing committee, which involves several NIH institutes, Gary Miller, one of the leading exposome experts, and others. Here are some of the participating organizations, and if you have stakeholders to nominate for this purpose, we're also having the last day dissemination part, which we are streaming, involving journalists and others, hoping that we get this on the road as an active public-private partnership. With this, I would like to stop. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It is always very, very impressive to see what the potential are with these different technologies. I mean, my background is actually in ecotoxicology, and just thinking about what we can do with the help of artificial intelligence is incredible. And also the potential benefits of combining of these technologies are just endless. But then, yes, the question becomes how far can it go and how far is it still beneficial and how can we regulate that space? So we will get into that a little bit later on. So Clarissa, the floor is yours now to tell us a little bit what your perspective is in this particular field. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session, and thank you for my colleagues and you for driving it. Well, a bit of context. I come from the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, and this office is the one where many treaties and conventions that human diplomacy and consensus have achieved in terms of how to prevent the use of some type of weapons. Some of the ones that touch upon the technology on artificial intelligence, the ones that come to my mind because of recent discussions that have been occurring at the United Nations, is one, the Biological Weapons Convention, and the second one will be everything related to the arms race in outer space. So this is the possibility to put weapons at the outer space area. And then the third one will be lethal autonomous weapons, if you have been hearing about that terminology recently. So they are all driven and can be empowered through artificial intelligence. If I focus a little bit more on the rapid advances of AI in bio, I will say that one of the latest developments that we have seen is generative AI, and maybe you'll be acquainted to it because you can use it to produce videos or to produce PowerPoint presentations. But nowadays, we are also seeing companies that are using generative AI to create new type of molecules, new type of different molecules that could have different properties, different toxicity, and whatever that can be able to do with all the technology that we have developed until now. To that, you also may have heard about large language models that maybe all of us or some of us are using when we are doing some simple task at work. But then this chat box can also be used for people that wants to develop a bioweapon in the sense of from ideation, like how can I create a bioweapon? How do I transport it? How do I produce it? How I disseminate it? So that means that people that perhaps don't have a complete 3 PhDs in molecular biology can have access to think about what will be the different mechanisms and steps that could help to create that. Not that we have seen anything, journalists have not come up with a story that shows that that's the case, but thinking ahead and using a little bit of foresight, that could be one of the ways how this chat box could be used. Now, we also have to remember, and you maybe see it in your countries, but I also see it at the United Nations, that sometimes diplomatic conversations and policy don't have the same speed as technological development. You can go sometimes to the conventions and you can see the diplomats have time frames that can go each 5 years. For example, in the Biological Weapon Convention, when you want to take decisions about something, it has to happen only during the review conferences. And those review conferences happen every 5 years. Nothing can happen in between, unless you call a special conference, but I can talk more about that later. If you talk with an engineer or a researcher in a technological company developing AI and you ask what are their frameworks, I think that some of them, or maybe most of them, will say that they work on 6 months frames. So definitely policy is not running at the same speed. And then I also have to remind you that at least at the Convention for Biological Weapons, we have 187 countries that have signed for this convention, and to take a decision, they have to take it by consensus. So that means if one country doesn't agree with the proposition, so it doesn't matter what the voices of the 186 are. And in terms of the where is that biological weapon convention in 2024, which is one of the conventions that is dealing with prohibiting the use of a weapon of mass destruction as biological, because you also have nuclear and chemical. I can also tell you that next year the convention is going to turn 50 years, and in comparison with our sister organizations, there are organizations that have been developing for nuclear and chemical, the BWC is really also lagging behind. Just in terms of staff, if you think about IAEA, which is this organization for nuclear, they have around 2,500 staff. The OPCW, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, has around 500, and they recently inaugurated a huge laboratory to process samples. The Biological Weapon Convention has 4 people, which is an example to showcase that there is not enough budget to come up with offices that maybe are focusing on capacity building, setting global guidance for biosecurity, doing outreach, doing education, having a legal office. So these are things that the convention cannot do at the moment. And because we don't have the budget for that, that also means this convention lacks a process of verification. So there is no way that the convention can go to a country and double check that what they are saying is true. We are not producing any biological weapon in our laboratories or in our place. How many minutes I left? Okay. And then if we think about AI, we can also think about all the other emerging technologies. What about quantum? What about cyber? And just linking between bio and cyber, you can think about cloud labs. Have you heard that now there are fully automated laboratories where you can just say, I want to produce this molecule, these are the guidelines, and then please ship it. I want to synthesize this DNA sequence, please ship it back. I was in a conference recently where a researcher just came up with a startup, a company, and then he told us that when I asked, what are the biosecurity guidelines that this company make you sign? And he was like, oh, none. Actually, I think like the less they know, the better for them. And that was the impression that he had when he was synthesizing different molecules at this cloud lab. So, for example, let's think there in a cloud lab. What will happen if it's hacked? What will happen if hospitals with genetic data are hacked and that information is released? What will happen if through cyber you can break into vaccine facilities? And without going too far, you may have remembered that there was a time where it became like entertainment, that if you send a saliva sample, a company doing genetic testing will tell you if you are 30% Peruvian, 20% Chinese, 10% United States, etc. So one of those companies is bankrupt right now. And now all that data is going to be sold to the best, to the person that can, or the company that can buy it. What will happen if this type of information is going into the wrong hands? So I mean, those are just one of the things that we should think about that converge between emerging technology. I can continue with the questions then, because I have other benefits and other things about AI.
Great, we will definitely come to that. Very, very interesting, and lots of kind of food for thought also. This idea of the importance of foresight, that now becomes much and more relevant. And in our different organizations, the need to restructure a little bit the resources, because there are certain priorities coming up now, and definitely there is need to also then match the resources that go with them, whether it's human resources or financial resources, to approach some of these issues. A good thing is also that from the UN, from the top, the Pact for the Future and other initiatives really are pushing towards these types of regulations at the international level, including rethinking of these mechanisms that we now have multilateral to regulate some of these issues. So hopefully there really will be a follow-up, and it is needed at the international level. So we'll come to that later on as well. Yanan, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. Hello, I'm Yanan Sui. I'm a faculty member at Tsinghua University in Beijing. It's great to have this opportunity to introduce our work on reinforcement learning and neuromusculoskeletal modeling of human beings. That is exactly something between the global scale and also the very micro and nano scale of things. How do we do individual level of learning and modeling, and how would that going to be able to have an impact for the real world applications. The terminology reinforcement learning, if you're not familiar with that, that is the main driving force behind AlphaGo, AlphaGo Zero, and a lot of cool recent progress in AI. Developed by DeepMind and other colleagues in the AI community. Before the establishment of AlphaGo, actually the terminology of artificial intelligence is a term that we don't want to say in public because AI is so cold. Saying artificial intelligence will prevent us from getting funded by the funding agencies. We say that we're doing machine learning, we're doing robotics, computer vision, natural language processing, all those sub-areas, but not AI. But these days, there is a dramatic change due to the, say, huge efforts from DeepMind and other colleagues. So playing Go is the application of deep reinforcement learning. It is the controlling of a complex system. Reinforcement learning, we also use that for the control of complex dynamical system, something like in the continuous real time, in the continuous space. Something in our real clinical applications at Tsinghua University and also in other universities and hospitals in the world, we have such treatments of implanting a high-dimensional stimulating array into the human spinal cord. And by finding the stimulating parameters, we could help patients to be able to stand up and walk again. So that's the neural stimulation via implanted devices. How to control those systems? We are taking advantage of the capability of reinforcement learning from the inside out. Neurostimulation. And from the outside in, we have a lot of interactive robots like exoskeleton and cobots for helping patients to regain the movement ability from the outside in. These are our approaches to help real individual human beings to be able to move again. Yeah, we know that AI machine learning these days are not 100% all about data, but the importance of data is really a big issue, right? But we cannot expect to get huge amount of real human data through clinical treatment, through real human experiments with healthy and patients, healthy subjects and patients. So what can we do? Think about it. Probably the only way is to do digital models. Sometimes we call that digital twin, sometimes digital cousin, sometimes the digital dynamical representation, sometimes embodied intelligence models. I'll just call that the model of ourselves for embodied learning. We want to do modeling and control of human motion. So here on this screen, you see that that is the model we build in our lab. We want to build each individual bones and muscles, and hopefully each individual neurons directly controlling the movement. For example, you know that when you are walking, what are the muscles that actually get involved in this process? And when you're sitting comfortably in the chairs, your muscles are also actively, say, involved in the movement control process. So now I'd like to ask you a question. How many muscles do we have as human beings? You probably can get some number from the screen. Yeah, is it a few dozens, a few hundreds, a few thousands, or even more? Yeah, make a guess. Hundreds. something over 600. Yeah, so that we don't have a very precise number of how many muscles we have, because within this conference hall, each individual of us may have different number of muscles, but there's something around 640, 650. So we'll hear the number that, oh, we have about 650 muscles. And that's why we built a model called the musculoskeletal MS Human 700. We don't want to miss any individual muscle, and we want to model those large, complicated muscles into individual muscle tendon units. Yeah, so we're increasing this number. Yeah, so think about it. If you want to have a real digital representation of our dynamical human, how should we model? What are the principles? First, we probably want to have a comprehensive collection of all the muscles and bones of the individual body, right? How many neurons we have? We have something like 100 billion. Yeah, sometimes people say 86 billion. That's not a precise number. We don't know the precise number at the moment. Yeah, but that large number, yeah, hundreds of billions of neurons, we cannot model or simulate each individual ones at the moment. Even we have the very, say, highly powerful machine learning infrastructures. But to simulate and to calculate the individual muscles and bones activities, we can do that. We want to build high, anatomically accurate, and able to interact with our environments. Yeah, we want a digital model that can interact with the real world. We also need to be computationally efficient so that we can drive the system to move, right? So today, if you're looking at such a complex system, we have large action and state space to control a real human being representation. We can have a comparison with a robot dog and the humanoid systems to the real human model. We have over 600 muscles. We have over 2,000 state representations of those muscles. But think about the robot dog and the humanoids. It's just a few dozens of, say, actuators and a bit more of the state representations. So it's hugely different. Then how do we control the system? We're taking advantage and developing the cutting-edge reinforcement learning methods to be able to control this system, so that for this model, when you see it's walking, in the blue you see actually that's the sensory information we can simulate going up to our central nervous system. And in the red, you see the direct control of individual muscles from the motor neurons, right? So we hope that from the bottom up, we can gradually have a better understanding constructively of how do we move. What's the neural control of movements of human being, yeah, in order to achieve natural walking, or maybe some failures, right? So you see that as we're growing, as we're aging, the probability of falling on the ground is actually a big challenge, a big risk of public health, right? So we can also simulate the behavior of natural walking forward, having a human exoskeleton interaction and having prosthetic walking. We want to have detailed and quantitative understanding of real human beings. We cannot do huge amount of human experiments, especially think about we have over 600 muscles. Can you allow the recording of each individual muscles by those needles or other devices? Probably not. Yeah, probably only simulations can help us to do that. So with this, I'd like to just end this introduction that how we build the self models of ourselves for the human movement control. We want to use it to learning to move. Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to continue the discussion with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, very, very impressive, and the benefits are probably limitless, but also some of the risks. Sitting next to you, thinking about the weaponizing of some of these models also makes me a little bit scary. So what I wanted to ask you, Thomas, you said in the beginning of your presentation or at a certain point, it is going too fast. We cannot control it, we cannot regulate it, yet is there some regulation that is in place? And if not, what would be the recommendations for those regulations?
I mean, if you see the velocity of policy processes, of legislative processes, there is no way to control something which grows 8-fold per year. There's no way. The genie is out of the bottle. And in the case of AI, if we restrict us to just to this, 80% of the publications in the AI field are done in Chinese. 60% of the patents in AI are coming out of China. So if we are having discussions in Europe and in the US to regulate AI, good luck. This is only slowing down a development in this part of the world, but it will not impact on others. This is nothing against Chinese colleagues, they're doing wonderful work. It is simply demonstrating that we would need a global consensus on slowing something down. And I think that the value proposition, as I tried to show in my talk, as Yanan showed in his, is enormous. If you just take drug development as one of the most important biomedical measures, we only since 2019 have the possibility really to develop drugs with AI. In the meantime, AI is 5,000 times more powerful, But already in 2022, 19 AI-first drugs came in human clinical trials, which means we shortened the development, preclinical development by 4 to 6 years. 1 day of development, 1 day earlier into the market is worth for a pharmaceutical company about $1 million. So if you see this value proposition alone, and sure, the same programs which are developing these drugs have been shown to also develop threat agents, chemical weapons. The AI is agnostic. If you say, I want something which is effective in killing, it does effective killing. I just was in Rabat for a high-level chemical weapon control and AI conference, and you heard all of these scenarios, but at the same time, AI is also helping us to develop countermeasures to exactly these type of drugs, something we were very much struggling with because we have no animal models and we have no human patients, fortunately. So how do we develop these drugs? AI is giving us platforms, these microphysiological systems I showed, are giving us platforms to develop something to counter it. AI is also the tool to deploy against the threat. It is, for example, identifying who is buying stuff which is needed for the synthesis of a threat agent. We can as much deploy it for fake and for identifying fake. And this, I think, this is the important lesson. So I think instead of regulating it, we have to put measures into place that the laws which we have, which already say you cannot impersonate somebody, you cannot talk somebody out of their money, we have to enforce them with the AI tools which are lending themselves to us. So we should embrace them and we should not limit them.
Thank you very much. This is interesting suggestions and proposals, and also this duality of these technologies that I think all of us are addressing in our daily professional lives. The fact that you can create the fake and then also discover the fake with the same technologies. So that's something that is definitely needed when thinking about regulatory or enforcement framework. So Thomas just said we need something at the global level. At UNESCO, the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence was adopted by 194 now countries in 2021. There is a new recommendation now looking into neurotechnologies with the same ideas of having these global principles that the different countries would adhere to. Is this the step in the right direction? Do we need more of that or less? How do we enforce these recommendations and these global agreements?
Hello? Yes. So actually, yeah, I was just writing down about the UNESCO AI principles. And another one that comes to my mind are the Tianjin University guidelines for biosecurity. This has been a guidelines that were developed thinking about the biological weapon convention. So I will also suggest anyone to go and look at it. Industry engagement, as we see, is that something that personally I think is very needed. And The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, for example, does an excellent job in that sense. I was recently at a conference in Morocco where they are already thinking about how AI can support the Chemical Weapon Convention. And there you can see how the industry was a speaker at different panels, and they were talking about how they are also even part of writing guidelines, global guidelines on chemical industry. There was even one company that received an award from the government of Malaysia because of the excellent policies that they have implemented, and this has been thanks to the interaction between organizations as the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and the industry and the state parties, so all the countries that are part of this convention. Then we also have the Secretary General Advisory Board on Artificial Intelligence, and the UN is set into implement the recommendations from that report. And one of those is to create an office for AI governance and how it's being used at different offices in the UN within the tech envoy. So this is a very high level show of engagement on how we are already thinking about the future and how UN countries, everyone that is part of the UN can be benefiting from that. And then I think you mentioned the Pact for the Future, or it was mentioned before. So this is an agreement that has also been signed by all your countries, I think. I don't know everyone from everywhere, but it has been signed recently in September. And if you go and look at the sections, there are only 4 sections, if I'm not mistaken. One section is completely focused on the role of science to be a driver for what's going to be the future of the world, the United Nations and the world, and how we are thinking about putting these future lenses to be ready and prepared. And then, because we are at the World Science Forum, I think it's a very useful thing to say that science policy interfaces, which is the topic of this year, is something that we should be trying to adopt as part of our research, but also as part of our future engagements, how my research will fit into solving a local, a national, or an even international challenge. So I encourage all of you to be thinking about how we can do it. We don't have the answers, but your voice may be one of the drops in this ocean that will come up with solutions for the future that we want and that we are aiming to have.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Building up on that a little bit, Jana, I wanted to ask you, how can we anticipate risks, and how can researchers better contribute to this science policy interface that needs to be strengthened if we want to look also at the risks of these emerging technologies?
Yeah, I think from the AI community, the major effort we're putting to is to make things open source. For example, the model I just presented and the reinforcement learning algorithms I just presented, the algorithms has already been open sourced. Any one of you, if you go to GitHub, you can find the code. The model will also be open source. Actually, at the time we published the paper that's seeing that, we have a full model of all the muscles and bones dynamically controllable. Our colleagues at DeepMind, Meta, and other, say, universities and research institutes, industry researchers, they're all very interested, and we do have a plan to open source, but we also want them to help together to evaluate the risk of open sourcing things, right? Because we're clearly building, say, nuclear power, nuclear weapon, chemical weapon, bioweapons. Those things should not be open source, right? Our model, we think that a lot of good things can be done with the open source model. In fact, that within a few months, you will see that our model will be open source through the platform of DeepMind and maybe also others, but Google DeepMind would be a good place to start. The thing is that from the AI research community, we're trying to be transparent. Right, so people can have a good understanding of what we're doing. They can replicate what we're doing. But whether those things have further consequences, I think within the AI community, we're not thinking that much in the long-term reward or the long-term feedback. Yeah, we're just thinking that, for example, my own group, all the research in my lab are publishable. We don't do say secret research on AI or on human-robot interaction, anything. But we want to publish everything. Yeah, but we also want the whole society to help together to make sure that these things are truly beneficial, and we have some level of good control of the downside of using things. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Any feedback? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I repeat myself certainly when I say the genie is out of the bottle, yeah? We cannot get it back into it. Yeah. Last year there were 160 large language models available. 60 of them were open. Yeah, available. I just saw a video where somebody showed how he trained a large language model with 5 iMac minis. Yeah, so a very reasonable investment of a 6 billion parameter model, which is about last year's technology. Yeah, so you can simply do it. Also because it is such an open field of sharing, it is very unusual that technology is not only deployed but also shared. Many of the companies are actually putting their things in the open. All of this became possible with the transformer models from Google, which were freely available since 2017. It is really an incredible field. So we have to live with it, yeah? And we better embrace it. It is wonderful to talk about learning from AI how to create a chemical threat agent. Sure. But you have not learned yet how to synthesize it without dying, how to handle it. You still have not the rocket technology to deploy it and spray it over another country. It is not just the knowledge of how to synthesize. I have textbooks from the old eastern part of Germany on military chemistry, where there is all of the recipes for dangerous enough substances to create sarin or so. This is not really the bottleneck. The bottleneck is elsewhere. And for this reason, I see much more opportunity really in deploying this carefully for control, but we have to increase the literacy of the agencies. We need AI specialists in the agencies who are employing these type of technologies to really make use of them and counter what bad actors in the private sector, what terrorists and others could possibly do, yeah?
Absolutely. No, the question of capacity building education in general in this field is very important. And yet, again, it feels like it's going so quickly that also developing these educational materials would need to follow as well. And there is a lot of people who are actually involved and who would benefit for understanding better the whole field of emerging technologies, and they don't actually have access to some of these educational resources. Any feedback on that, or any feedback to what the other colleagues said?
So I'm going to take my hat from the UN for a second, and I just going to remember my previous job, which was working on existential risks. And sometimes we gather with all the researchers studying this field, and I remember one of them saying, have you heard about artificial general intelligence, which is when an AI will be able to do everything that a human can do, but with the capability of a computer. So this person said that the one that creates the first AGI will be the country that will be able to win any war. So sometimes when I remember that phrase and when I hear about economics as well, like we have to keep growing, now I feel that sometimes our discussions on science are also going into that way, saying like we have to keep, I mean, we cannot stop science and so on. And I think that's why what you said, education must be maybe the key, maybe one of the source of the solution for that. And I'm a molecular biologist. I learned about the Biological Weapon Convention 3 years after finishing my PhD. I have never been in, I had the chance to study in 3 different continents, and in none of them, they put me on a classroom with a policymaker, with a patient. I was doing research in cancer, research on glaucoma. I never had spoken with a patient. And I think that there are a lot that we can do also at the universities and institutions to the topics of ethics, because, I mean, the technology is not the problem. The problem is us, with not having ethical guidance. And sometimes it's not even on purpose. Sometimes it's lack of knowledge about, in my case, in our field, biosecurity guidelines and so on. So we'll encourage the community to tell us about study cases. What is working in your countries? What do you think has made a change in how students or professors or employees at the industry are looking at technology and thinking about how to be more ethical in that aspect? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything to add?
Yeah. I want to tell you a very interesting story. Since I'm regularly teaching, and for a lot of cases, when we do the teaching, we need teaching materials, we need textbooks, right? And there is ones that I need just 1 chapter of a textbook. Then I ask the publisher that can I, by the way, I also need to translate that into Chinese by myself, so it's easier for me to teach. Then I do the translation. I got the copyright from the publishing group. It cost me something like $200 US to distribute that single chapter to my class of 50 students. Right. So that is what copyright is running appropriately in our society. Right. But today, if you ask a large language model whether it read a book or not, yeah, you may give a very quick try. It's very likely that whatever book you ask, as long as it's a real book, the answer will be yes. And the large language model actually has reasonable amount of memory of the content of that single book, right? So, but how much money or how much reward were distributed to the publishing group, to the authors, to the community that contributed to the knowledge? I think that part is totally corrupted or collapsed at this moment. That is part of the reason why, from my point of view, why the huge tech companies didn't say run fast. At the race of say creating powerful large language models. Yeah, so that would be a very big issue. So from the machine learning point of view or AI point of view, we call that a credit assignment issue. Right? How do we design and distribute reward to a proper learning system? Yeah, so if we cannot do that appropriately within human society, so that will be, say, very troublesome. Yeah, from my point of view. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you very much. So we've heard from the panelists. I would like to use this last 20-25 minutes for some questions from the audience. Perfect. We'll start with the first question there in the middle, then here, there. Yes, please. I saw a first hand. Yes, first hand raised. If you can just introduce yourself very quickly so we know.
Thank you. My name is Karim Tahboub. I'm from Palestine. Clarissa, you talked about lethal autonomous weapons, and you mentioned risks about using them. Well, I would like to tell you that it's not risk anymore, it's a reality. Israel has been using lethal autonomous weapon in its war against people of Gaza for the last 400 years. Actually, where I live, Israel has installed autonomous machine guns pointing at school children at one of the cross points. They have not used them yet, but maybe they will use them. My question is for everyone here, for us as scientists, do we accept this? What is our responsibility against this? And for you working at a UN agency, can the UN prevent this or at least control that? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for this question. We'll take another couple of questions and then go back to the panelists for responses. Yeah, there's a question here.
I think there's one problem which has not been touched here on the regulation, but which is implicit. In the last few years, but we are object of much pressure on the fact that the scientific collaboration must be between like-minded countries. And this basically has the roots exactly in what you have said, but in practice is becoming a big threat to science diplomacy, science collaboration, I would say to any form of multilateralism in science.
Thank you. The last question over there.
Thank you. My name is Muzaffer Elmas from Turkish Science Academy. I ask, Mr. Thomas, I want to ask. Last month we had a conversation with Turkish Nobel Prize Aziz Sancar. I asked him what to talk about the artificial intelligence. In response, he said, I wish I had come to the world late because I had come to work that did my 5 years work in 2 days. They did my 5 years work in 2 days. In this possible, what will change?
All right. So maybe a quick response. Any other questions? All right. Let's do the round of 3 and then we'll get back to the other 2 questions over there. So yes, the first one I think was for you, Clarissa, about the use of bioweapons.
Thank you. Yes. So in terms of the United Nations, I would like to let you know that the UN employees have a mandate that is given by the state parties. So it's given by all the countries. And to put an example, the Biological Weapon Convention every year collects confidence-building measures. These are reports that every country writes every year saying we have 5 BSL level labs, we are doing this vaccine production, we have produced this type of articles. Our mandate is to collect them, but we do not have the mandate to analyze them, to make comparisons, to see what has changed from one year to the other one. So this is a little example on how the United Nations is dependent on the mandate that is being given by the countries. And those mandates happen, in our case, for example, at the review conferences, where 187 countries have to agree by consensus. So I guess that this is one of the restrictions, let's say, that we have. Last year, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons achieved something super important. They achieved what we all want to achieve with the conventions that try to destroy weapons. They destroy all chemical weapons that have been declared by countries. Have you seen that news in your countries? I mean, this is something that is that I think it should have more press attention, and for us to also know that there are some examples that we can copy because they have been successful. And recently, another example of the things that we see at the UN offices, there is a convention for conventional weapons, and recently one country decided to leave. So again, we have multilateralism is improving and is evolving, but we also can have treaties and agreements, and then when there is one state party, when there is one of your countries that decides not to put global interests over national interests, these type of things could happen. And well, I have more examples like that, but the point is that sometimes We also share some limitations, but at the end, the UN is based on that concept that we do what the state parties tell us to do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Clarissa. The other question was around the scientific collaborations among like-minded countries and around the issues of emerging technologies and how is that then affecting more globally science diplomacy and multilateral collaborations, including international scientific collaborations. So a little bit more about the scientific collaborations in this field.
I think, again, AI is an enabler here. I had the privilege to work with the World Economic Forum on the transformative map of large language models in science last year. And the first thing we noted when writing our white paper for this, 50% of biomedical research is done in languages other than English. But large language models give us access. They translate perfectly between these. They allow us to spread our messages in whatever language we want. So this is already enabling collaboration in a way which we did not see before, really turning down a lot of these barriers.
Great. Any other comment on that, Yanan, from your side?
I think
international collaboration.
From my experience, doing more theoretical research, international collaborations are much easier than doing, say, real experiments with the exchange of, say, sensitive, say, human data because of privacy issues and say international fundings. I think that is more difficult comparing to doing, say, theoretical machine learning research, in the past few years.
Excellent, thank you very much.
If I may say something about the weapon and AI especially. I think what we should ban is autonomous AI combined with weapon, so that the AI is identifying what to shoot at or what to kill. There should be the human in the loop, the human responsibility of ultimately deciding of doing this. And I think that's a more realistic goal because it is limiting this. Will not be able to limit that the military is using AI. They have probably far advanced models which we can only dream of. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, on the comment from the Turkish Nobel Prize winner. Any comments on that? Any feedback?
Maybe Thomas.
Absolutely right. I mean, I have a personal example from last year. So exactly September a year ago, I peer-reviewed a risk assessment for a chemical. And I know that 2 people had been working on this risk assessment for 18 months. So it was a $400,000 investment. And after I did my peer review, I used the large language models to say, what do you know about this substance? And the most advanced models found in minutes all of the information which was in this dossier. I did not extract it from the sources. I did not do the risk assessment itself, but it would have accelerated this by at least bringing it down bringing it down to 1/3 of the time. I would suggest, and this means with hundreds of thousands of chemicals which we should risk assessment for which we simply have not time just to do it. Not that we have no data, that we have not the time to get all the information together. We could do it now probably in a very reasonable time and do good for public health. Yeah.
Great, yeah, that liberates the time to actually look into other things and advance.
This is a very important point. Yes. You know, I see AI work and really as the opposite to the information flooding, which is killing all of us. It is the only technology which is condensing information, which means I don't have to read thousands of pages, I get the answer. I don't have to go through all of the 10, 15 Google hits to read them and evaluate them. I get a condensed piece of information. And this is in the end changing something very important, which is the work-think balance. If I use it well, I have more time to think. It is getting me to do the critical evaluation. Is this the answer I need? Do I need to change my prompt? Do I need to ask additional things? Because also the additional information I will get very fast. But we are having a discussion at the moment, especially in the universities, of do we allow our students to use AI? That's nuts. This is like when in my generation, handheld calculators were introduced and the people said, this is the end of mathematics. Spoiler alert, it was not. Because it is still, if you put in the wrong numbers, you have a wrong result. And you are responsible for the end result. You're not responsible for the way you get there. If there's equity in access to these tools. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Yes, please, other two questions up there. And please just introduce yourselves very quickly.
Thomas Benhazi from Australia. Thomas, that question is for you as well. I love when you said, the genie is out of the box already, we can't do anything. I'm actually in the agriculture area, I see a little bit of parallel with new technologies like genetic engineering. People were so scared about that. Do you reckon it's mainly the speed of change and the capacity which scares society? What do you think, why AI is so, scary for some people? What are the main reasons for that?
Thank you. Let's just have a couple of other questions and then we'll get back to the panelists. Yes.
Okay, my name is Frederico Palanga and I'm from Angola. My question is to Dr. Thomas again. I would like to ask, from what you just mentioned, how difficult is the regulation of the AI in policy making? Do you have, I believe that what cannot be regulated, it's a weapon, I would say that. Everything must be regulated. So could you tell us a bit more your personal opinion that how the policy making could be done so that the AI might be regulated, please? Thank you.
Very good. And the third question up there, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Lina from Democratic Republic of the Congo. So I have a question for Professor. You talked about digital model, you talked about digital twin because there is privacy regarding the data collection, which makes sense because data is critical, it's the new oil, and if people or organizations use it bad, like it can create conflict. But what do you do when you have limitations? Because you can have limitations with digital twin or digital model, and you need to collect real data. Thank you.
Great. Two questions for you, one question over there, and maybe a comment, yes.
Okay. I start to forget the questions.
What is so scary about AI?
Scary about AI is obviously that this is a technical revolution, and no technical revolution was without victims. And this is the first time it's not the blue-collar workers, it's the white-collar workers which are affected. So a group of people who always felt safe. And this is, however, I'm talking a lot to toxicologists because I'm a toxicologist. And one of my standard lines here is AI will only replace toxicologists who don't use it. And I think this holds for each and every field. We simply have to embrace it and we have to see the advantages. We have to see the advantages of a technology which is also democratizing things. It is extremely cheap. It does cost me $20 per month to have access to the best large language models at the moment, which gives me access to not all, but tons of information. That's democratizing things. This is even affordable in developing countries to create access to these. And more of this is becoming free anyway, because players like Meta are making their models freely available. So I think that the advantages clearly outweigh this. But we should at the same time set guardrails. But these guardrails are not on the AI side. It's not about developing the technology. It is about applying it. We have to find ways to control what you do. The context of use is the problem. And here, essentially, everything is already illegal. What you can do as things. Fraud is illegal. We have to enforce it. We have to counteract it better. We have to find ways of really finding the tools of controlling where AI is improving the bad actors at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that leads to the other question. So, what are the tools that we can use to improve policy making so that it can better incorporate the risks?
I wrote an editorial for Frontiers on can we take AI out of the Wild West and should we? And I believe we cannot. At the moment there is Wild West, and Wild West is a necessary phase before a society sets rules and orders. But it's also a very creative phase where you make your claims, where you develop your landscape. And I think this is an important phase at the moment. It's such a young technology. Yeah? I mean, it is exactly 2 years that ChatGPT 3.5 came out and was taking the world in storm. Yeah? And this is only one of the many AI technologies we have. The large language models, the generative AI, is at the moment dominating discussions. But it is so much more what is happening, and it is fascinating to see. But we will also see that a lot of these things are suddenly going bankrupt, because there is no business model really for these large language models. Nobody is willing to pay tons of money, but it costs millions and hundreds of millions to train such a model. And this is something which is really a Wild West phase, but I think society will, as every technological revolution, will in the end benefit. But we have to deal with the jobs which are taken, the self-driving cars which are suddenly taking away the jobs of drivers. Yeah? All of these robots. Amazon is employing 850,000 robots already. Just this one company, 850,000. They have more than 1 million workers, but they have 850,000 robots as well. Yeah, and this is where society has to deal with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Clarissa, any feedback from you on the question of policy making and including the risks inside policy making processes?
Yes, so again, I'm just going to make a comment without my UN cap, so please don't quote me. I'm thinking about the development of artificial intelligence, and I feel a little bit concerned in a personal capacity. Of course, there are many benefits, and we can see it in medicine and so on, but in the future, I wonder how it's going to play and how regulation is going to be perhaps different looking in the North and the global South. And I also wonder if national implementation of regulations will be enough, and if instead we need global guidance. So what is allowed in some can be also allowed in others, but what is prohibited in some can also be prohibited in others. So I guess that it's such a complex topic because, of course, we all want to benefit from technology and we want to have access to it as cheaper as possible, but the balance, I think, has to come from a multidisciplinary conversation, not just from scientists, not just from diplomats, but I think that from citizens that are the ones that are also using technologies at the hands of everyone. And also we have to think about, when we talk about science policy interfaces, sometimes people forget science is also social and humanities. And during the pandemic, at least in Peru, we saw and we were witness of how some of the policies didn't work. A small example, the government in Peru decided that men will go out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and women will go out on Tuesday, Thursday. They forgot that in Peru, most of the families are female. The adults are female because males have left and they are not part of the nuclear family. So that meant that that person that works daily didn't have any income on that day. They also forgot that many families do not have a refrigerator in their home. So then this will not work. And then another policy that was also implemented was to give a check to the most disadvantaged families. But then again, they forgot that they are not bancarized, I think is the word in English. They don't have a bank account. So they all have to be queuing together to cash the bonus at the National Bank. And here is where I think the social and humanities will have played a key role if Congress people, of all the ones that were developing the policies, would have been listening to the reports that they produced in the past and then knowing these facts. And then I also want to remind everyone that facts are not enough. And you can have the perfect plan of how the the world should run, but then you are slapped on the face by politics and by economical pressures. So then this is another reason why we need to look at the elephant, not just from the tail or the feet, but we need to look at it together and trying to find what's the best option that is going to be useful for all, because there are some limitations, as we said, and for me, it's the only way forward.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much, Clarissa, for that. Yanan, there was a question for you from the audience.
Yes, yeah, I'd like to add a quick comment on the large language model thing and then answer the question. So it's very interesting that in the past few years, sometime after 2018, 2019, we see that there are still published models, large language models, but no longer published data sets that you can train for the language models or whatever multimodality models. So that's you see that thing happening in the next few years, or probably for all the future years, because I'm very curious about what are the real data that are used for the training of the data. A lot of us are coming from university background. We know that the language models it definitely reads a lot of research papers. For our universities, we paid a lot to get the copyrights so that we can read the papers, right, from the digital library, from Johns Hopkins, from Tsinghua universities, for whichever university. But how much does the language model companies pay for those copyrights for the books? For all the knowledge, how do we figure out how to assign those credits? So that's a very problematic thing from my point of view. And then going back to the question that how we're developing AI and developing digital models, we want to do things that human beings cannot do. We want to do things that are replacing what humans can do. For example, digital twin is not a new idea. It's actually a mature idea from the manufacturing industry, especially say we're building airplanes, we're building a spaceship, right? We don't know what exactly the conditions would be. We build a digital twin digital model. We do the simulations we cannot do the real experiments at all. Right. I personally don't like the idea that, getting real data is expensive, so we do simulations or other things. So that has an underlying meaning that humans are expensive. We want to get rid of the human values and human costs because that's expensive. I personally don't like that idea. I want the AI models and the learning techniques we develop that is doing what humans cannot do. For example, if we're running a human biomechanical system that with all the muscle activities, think about, can we do the real experiments in the real physical world to record something like over 600 muscles of a human being? Not at all. Not even in the next few decades, within the foreseeable future. So so there are a lot of areas like that we can use AI to do things that clearly out of the scope of human capability and can be very beneficial. But still we see a lot of things happening that we're using AI to do things that humans can do. We just think that humans are expensive in terms of collecting data, in terms of doing experiments. So I'm kind of worried about such kind of value. Right.
Thank you very much, Yanan. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time. We have to wrap up. But I will give the three speakers another chance to kind of just give us their last 1 minute key message or takeaway message.
Okay, if I understood Yanan right, that he was saying, praising copyrights, I'm exactly on the opposite side here. I think we have to publish open access. It is a scandal that there's a copyright on things which were paid by taxpayers' money, and I laud the EU who is requesting this. And I think please. And I really believe that we have to inject our research into the public knowledge, which is represented by the trained AIs. And this is why I'm one of the originatory signatories of the Open Access Charter, Open Science Charter. I think it is really extremely important that we feed our knowledge in and stop publishing for the benefit of some publishing organizations.
Thank you very much. That's a call for open science, also in line with what UNESCO has been proposing as well with its other recommendation on open science. And this link between AI and open science is something that we are kind of exploring right now when looking into what are the benefits and also what are the risks of this connection between openness and artificial intelligence. So if you are interested, you can follow these discussions that are currently happening at UNESCO as well. Clarissa, your last words.
Yes, so from my point of view, I talk about the case of Peru because I witnessed it, but I know that probably in all your countries you have witnessed mistakes when dealing with the crisis. Maybe the most recent one was the pandemic. We can go some decades before and we can remember like the horrible catastrophe with the nuclear war and what happened in Japan. So I think that the most important thing from these events is to focus also on the lessons learned and to discuss them and to bring them back and talk about what worked, what didn't work in your country. Let's try to do this knowledge sharing of study cases and try to think together how not to repeat past mistakes because they could be the basis for future events that we have not been exposed yet. So I think it's also good to think about and reflect about what we did wrong to come up with new ideas and solutions.
Excellent, thank you very much. Yanan.
All right, yeah. I'd just like to address that my goal would be that having AI, at least we developed, our colleagues developed to do things that humans cannot do and properly assign the credits, assign the values to the human society, right? So, so also as a reply that I agree that the current copyright system is not perfect, but I personally think that it's a runnable system that's assign more credits and assign more value to the human society as a whole. So with the developing of AI in the next few years, next few decades, I think the major issue would be that how can we guarantee that the values are properly assigned to the human society? Yeah.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our speakers.